First. So tonight we have a treat to John's evening. We have John Taylor, who's from the Missouri Sheriff's Department.
They're correct.
Yep. And John Sarabia from the ATF training center in San Antonio.
TSA.
Sorry. TSA training center in Texas. So, hi, Aaron is ready and waiting, and I see people are starting to hang out. So tonight we're gonna just kind of get some information. Hi, Patty. Hi, everybody. About a day in the life of a detection dog trainer, and a day in the life of a handler, and we're gonna find out, got some information, and be ready to ask questions. So we're going to get started with John Taylor. So how did you get started in being a handler and dog detection work?
Well, I started in law enforcement. Actually, I started in the military. Kind of give you a backstory. As soon as I graduated high school, left for the military, done the whole military side. Came back, thought it'd be a great idea to be law enforcement. Become a cop 10 years ago, and then about 3 years after that, I applied for a grant actually for our department and was awarded a K9. So they sent us through all the training, and I've been a K9 handler for about seven years now, almost 8 years. So,
what kind of dog do you have?
Right now I have a Dutch Shepherd from the country Hungary. It's my first Dutchie. I was kind of nervous whenever they told me it was a Dutch Shepherd. They're definitely, my last dog was a Belgian Malinois, and the one before that was a long-haired Shepherd. So definitely the best dog I've had. He's just got a few screws loose.
All righty then. All right, and John, I know you've done pretty much everything in the detection world. So how'd you get started?
I got started. I was a military cop for 10 years. Had the opportunity to retrain into K9. Went through K9 school at Lackland Air Force Base, where I'm at now, in 2001. Since then, I've handled both narcotics and explosive detection dogs. All of them have been patrol trained. My time in the military, I was certified to handle dogs, run training as a trainer for the kennels, and also run the kennels as a kennel master. So I did everything in that career field for the last almost 10 years of my career.
Oh wow! Okay. So and now you're doing you're training. Are you training people or dogs or both?
Yes. So now I'm down at it's both. So now I'm down at Lackland Air Force Base working for TSA as a training instructor. What we do down here is we take dogs and green dogs, take them from day one all the way through explosives detection training, get them ready to go to students or get them ready to be replacement dogs for dogs that are through attrition out in the field. Every trailer has a designation of what you train them as. If it's the dogs are going to a class, then we put on our instructor hats and we start teaching the handlers course with those dogs that we've already trained. So we have firsthand knowledge of those dogs. We can turn them over to the students, pair them up so they have a good match, get them going, and we can problem solve anything that may come up with that student because we've seen the full life cycle of that dog all the way through. We graduate them, we can send them out into the field to go do their jobs and get certified. In addition to both of those roles as a trainer and an instructor, we do evaluations. So we go out into the field at any port of entry that has a TSA dog, and we do evaluations annually on those dogs out in the field, whatever they're designated as for their search abilities, if you will.
Okay.
So we kind of wear three hats. Yeah. We do it all.
So, hey, John Taylor, so is your Dutchie, what do you do? Do you do detection or do you do,
he's a dual purpose. So we have the 5 narcotics, soon to be 4 narcotics. And then we do the patrol side as far as suspect apprehension, tracking. He does article search. We've thrown kind of the touch up training with him. And as far as that, I mean, he gets, I would say about 85% of the time, it's narcotic detection based. We get called out for missing persons every once in a while, but it's more street drug detection than the patrol side of it where we're at.
Okay. All right. So Joanne, could you start with question 3? I think we're
Sure. So, how have you guys noticed that detection training? I know you both said you've been in this about 10 years, right? How have you noticed the training has changed in the last, 10 years or a few years?
I guess I'll start. As far as with my side of it, with 10 years, I mean, I've seen it change a little bit. There hasn't been as much.
Oh, we lost him. So, hey, how about I pick up where he left off?
Go for it, John.
Hey, so for me, what I've seen over the time has been there was a lot of compulsion when I first started. A lot of escape and avoidance training. It's gone to a lot of more positive with verbal markers and timing of rewards and things like that, and a lot more behavior shaping. So I can say I've seen that switch from compulsion to a more positive base training environment. And I think just the use of verbal markers, a lot of time when I first started, a lot of it was you didn't really tell your dog anything until it was all said and done, and the reward just popped up out of nowhere. Now it's more cohesive as a team, and being able to communicate a little more is more encouraged than it was before, where it was more do as I say, do it now.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yep. Got
Yep.
it. All right, John, you were saying?
Sorry, I'm a country kid at heart. Me and technology does not get along.
It's okay. It happens.
But what I was saying is, I mean, I've seen it change a little bit, but it's not as much as people would expect. I'm sure he touched on this, but unfortunately, I was having technology trouble, user malfunction, and so the biggest thing I've seen when I first went through the first academy, it was actually down in Anniston, Alabama, AMK9. They sent us through that course. One of the first courses they had as far as for law enforcement side. And they do a lot of military explosive dogs and contracting dogs. It was more of a surprise with the as far as rewarding your dog. The toy, it was real toy driven. As far as they didn't focus a lot on praising your dog, getting your dog amped up. It was more, oh, hey, there's a toy in the dog. Focused on the toy. Now, I just went through another one 4 years ago, 10-week 10-week course, and you get yelled at if you didn't praise your dog. And they wanted you to focus on getting the dog excited and letting the dog know, hey, you're there to help him. And I've noticed that anymore, it's more of I used to hear it all the time. You're the dummy at the end of the leash. If the dog's trained right, the dog knows exactly what to do. Well, unfortunately, times change. People learn. You're not really the dummy at the end of the leash, because everybody knows how's that dog going to get to source if you don't put them in productive areas. And you'll hear me preach that and different things like, well, why are you going to check on top of the box when obviously you can't see nothing? I've seen people point at a blank spot on a wall. I'm like, does it look like anything hid there? Take him to a corner, take him to the threshold, somewhere productive. So, I mean, they train that real hard. Everybody's starting to understand. A lot of seminars you see have the smoke. They use a smoke machine showing you how the odor and everything uses or flows. I think they're just the technology is getting there for people to the old trainers. They've been doing it so long. They're like, oh well, we know how to do this, but I don't think they as far as teaching somebody, they don't truly. They just like, oh hey, this is the dog done it, yay. But now they're teaching. Well, this is why the dog. They're breaking it down. This is why the dog's doing it. That way, if something happens in step 2, you're not on step 5, and you're way too far gone. You got to restart. And I've been there. I mean, I've recorded myself, and I'm like, you just shake your head and restart. I mean, that's the easiest way to fix your problems. Record yourself and go from there.
Yeah.
That's how we all learn.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think the biggest thing coming up that any canine handler in the U.S. is going to face is the legalization of marijuana. All of our canines were trained on it. Missouri hasn't given. Sorry, I got a cough. I have allergies. Missouri hasn't given a directive as far as if we're still going to be able to search a vehicle if they hit on marijuana. Granted, you can only possess so much of it, legal, not legal.
Oh, yeah.
We
Well,
haven't got directives, so we're the trainers. We're all talking about possibly weeding the marijuana out of the dogs, trying to break them of it, just doing away with. There's some of them that's agreements with, there's some of them's not,
mhm.
because of the trafficking of it. I have some friends in Texas that
Exactly.
say on the border they're not going to because they use them for the semis and stuff like that. As
Right.
far as down. But as far as like up here in Missouri, we got some big loads that come through, but it's more every day that someone's out smoking weed or whatnot. They're kind of weighing the option of, is it an illegal search if they legally have marijuana in the vehicle? Well, the judges haven't ruled as far as, hey, just because you can smell it, how do you know it's legal or not legal? They haven't given directive on that. So I think that's gonna be the biggest change in the last 10 years as far as in the canine world, trying to figure out that.
Hmm. So, yeah, because I think there's still going to be an issue with the how much you can have, right?
Right. And
Right.
then there you can only possess so much, and you got to have a prescription. But the problem is they haven't determined if it's going to be an illegal search if the dog hits on the vehicle you search and you find marijuana. Yeah, they have a script, but if they have more, is it going to be a legal search? And now that you've detained them for an illegal assumption that it was illegal,
Right.
but yet it was legal because they do have a script. They
Right.
haven't given directive on it. It's going to be a touchy thing. More than likely, it's going to go if they show you any kind of card saying it's legal, you're just going to just walk away and go from there. It's what's
Yeah.
going to happen. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's a citation, or at least we don't fingerprint or anything. It's we print our tickets out and send them on their way anymore. So
Right. So,
Yeah.
so the question, I know we forgot to ask you, how long have you been judging NACSW, our Nosework trials?
when was Columbia?
I was just thinking it was, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, wasn't it?
They had been, I would say it's probably 2015, probably would have been
Yeah.
somewhere,
Yeah.
so probably about 5 years now.
Maybe 5 years. Cool.
You
Yeah,
do-
'cause that one was your first one, right?
No, our first one was in
Oh.
2011.
But John's the one we're
Yeah.
talking about. John did the one he judged out with me. That was his very first one.
Very
Yeah.
first
So
one, yep.
Okay.
for me, I think I've been judging
A little bit
8 or
long.
9 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a hot minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like we've been doing trials up here for almost 10 years now. So, and I know you've come up, and both of you have come up in this neck of the woods to judge for us.
Oh yeah.
I love coming up and judging for you. It's always an adventure. It's fun seeing what new venue you got.
So, so really quickly, what I wanted to just touch upon, like, what's your typical day, John? We'll start with John Sarabia. Your typical day when you get to, what your day is like.
So my typical day, we come in at 6 o'clock. We're at work at 6. Yeah, right. So we come in at 6. We pick up the truck and trailer that we have assigned to our team. We'll go out to the kennels and we'll pick up dogs. However many dogs are assigned to our team. Currently, I have like 15, I think, assigned to our team right now. We load up the dogs in the trailer, drive out to the training area that we're doing training. We train there in multiple venues throughout the day. Whatever we do, we usually have them put up about 3 o'clock, and we're on our way home after 3. That's a normal training day for me, pre-COVID.
What breeds are you training mostly?
Woo, we got a ton of them. So a lot of the last 2 trailers I've been involved in have been all pointy ears, German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois. Prior to that, German short-haired pointers, wire-haired pointers, seen some English Springer Spaniels, saw Vizsla in there in the kennels the other day. I've seen some Treverns down there. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. We have specific vendors in the U.S. and abroad that we can buy from. So we have a procurement team that goes out, buys dogs from those vendors, and whatever we get from them is what we're working with.
Okay. And,
but there's a plethora of breeds.
wow, that's pretty cool. And John, how about you? Does your dog live with you, or do they live in a kennel, or?
Nope. He comes home with me every night. He's got an outdoor kennel and he's got an indoor kennel. So usually during the day when we're off, he spends it outside hanging out in the sun. He's got a pretty maid in there on his days off, and he takes advantage of it. I bring him in at night just for safety issues. Anybody out there messing around with him. We go to work. I mean, I have obviously a take-home patrol car, so I'm subject to call. That's what's different about it. We have 2 dogs around here. We cover 19 counties or something like that. So we always get called out. Troop's always the primary as far as if it's a bunch of counties away. But a lot of times he's busy. He's just one dog, so I'm always the backup for him. So we get called out by multiple agencies. You just never know who's going to call us out. So we go to those calls. But as far as like for my department, I'm still subject to most calls. So we just do our normal patrols. We do a lot of business checks. We do our mandatory training. We do our, as far as training hours, we always do our narcotic training, and then we do our tracking and stuff like that. I do a lot of individual stuff, or I'll coax some of the different workers to go out there and lay some tracks for me, some man tracks. And then, of course, we have our certifications and everything with our training masters and stuff like that. But it's pretty laid back for the most part. A lot of times, I mean, sometimes I look back in the kennel and he's back there snoozing. So he's definitely got it made. I was on a traffic stop one day and I was about to get him out, and I looked back and he's back there sleeping. You know, my last dog, he'd sit there and bark and bark and bark, and this one he's just upside down sleeping. I'm like, they're like children. So
yeah, right. Yeah, he's like, okay. So go ahead, Joanne.
So I just have a random question for you. When you guys have been out and about, what has been your scariest encounter?
Oh goodness, that actually was here 3 weeks ago.
Oh.
So we actually had a guy. There's an up by La Plata. There's an Amtrak station. Well, it comes from Chicago to Kansas City, and we're the only stop. So anybody that gets on trouble on the train, they kick off in La Plata, which is awesome, Macon County. So we always have issues with people getting kicked off the train. Like those guys are like they're mean. The Amtrak police, I guess, because if you steal or borrow a pillow, I don't know. I've heard so many excuses getting kicked off the train. It's not funny. So I got a call. It was about 11 p.m. and we had a guy that went to Casey's. He was trying to steal stuff, and then one of the officers up there attempted to make contact, and he ran out. And then they couldn't find him. Then they were looking for him for trespassing and attempted theft. And they don't think he got anything. So they're like, hey, can you come track this guy? Well, then the guy kept coming back. And we were up there for 3 hours tracking this guy. I don't know how far we went. Ended up finding him. Sent Aaron on him. Guy fled, resisting at that point. Set him on him. He hit him in the back. They flipped, and when I went around the corner, he was there, and this guy was fast. Like, I wouldn't have caught him. I promise you. I didn't know if the dog was going to catch him. I'm like, maybe. All right, maybe. He was fast. But he was pretty strong, too. We believe he was under the influence of narcotics, which doesn't help. But he was choking him. He was choking the dog and wouldn't let go. So he had Aaron by the throat. Aaron had him by the hand, and he had him by the throat. Of course, this guy had a leather jacket on, so he wasn't getting the full bite, so it was kind of slipping. And so finally he let go and then Aaron rebit him, and then he finally gave up with it. But just the idea that guy was fast and Aaron was so far away, and I come around the corner and he's sitting there choking my dog and won't let go. It's kind of, because I'm just thinking, man, if I was any further, what would have happened, or if he would have had a gun with his other hand, he could have. So that was kind of made me a little, like, makes you think, like, well, should I send him? Because, it was pitch black, dark at night. If I didn't see what building they went behind, I mean, he could have had a few more minutes there choking the dog. And so that was kind of an experience. That was just 3 weeks ago or whatnot. And then he got back out of jail like 2 days later. So I seen him walking north when I was getting off work one day, and I was like, are you kidding me? So that's how that works.
I feel bad for the next time your dog gets deployed on somebody. That's he's gonna remember that.
He's a big dog too. He's one of the biggest Dutchies I've ever seen. If you picture a Great Dane, I'll have to send you guys a picture.
Wow.
He's the height of a Great Dane, and he weighs about 140 pounds. He's a big dog.
Lord.
When he stands, like, I'm 6'6". When he stands up, his paws can go on my shoulders, and he can look at me. Like, he's a massive Dutchie, one of the biggest ones I've ever seen. He's a beautiful dog, but obviously that guy was pretty stout. So
wow,
that's a big dog, man.
Yeah. He is a big dog, but of course he's got the temperament of a Great Dane too. He's a big lap dog. A big lap dog. Like, I'll let him in the house every once in a while, and he jumps up on the chair with you and tries to lay down. And of course, you're sitting there struggling for air because he doesn't realize he's so big.
Nice.
Oh my God.
So, John Sarabia, how about you? What was your scariest encounter?
Well, I've got two. If you'll give me the opportunity. My last trip to Iraq, I worked nights, and all I did was search interstates looking for IEDs. And if we weren't doing that, we're out hiding out in the desert looking for bad guys. That's all we did. So I got woke up in the middle of my sleep cycle one day, and got told I was requested to go out and search a vehicle that somebody had pulled over on the interstate. And I was like, I work nights, right? You've got dogs on. They were like, no, they want the best dog in the kennel, and Basco, I guess, got picked. Basco was an amazing dog. But so we loaded up, and we went out there, and got out to the Suburban out in the middle of the interstate. And you know how your screens, the sunshades, you put them on, and it's got pictures and stuff. Well, this Suburban had pictures of every one of the top Al Qaeda leadership on it.
Ooh.
So that instantly made me, made me pucker a little bit, and made me think about life and how we're gonna do this. So, I got out there, and I checked the wind direction, and I was like, look, this is how we're gonna do this. I'm going downwind, way downwind. And I'm just going to start kind of bracketing all the way upwind towards the vehicle to see if my dog throws a change. So I kind of did this horseshoe real wide downwind and kind of worked my way up to the vehicle. And luckily, there was nothing in that one. They suspected something was up with it. It had fictitious license plates on it from another country. It had somebody, it was associated with a branch of military that really couldn't give a lot of good information from it. And when you got inside of the vehicle, there was a lot of loose wires everywhere. There were, mechanical parts everywhere, buckets of diesel fuel everywhere. And, it had all the signatures of this could be a bomb. So that's why they called us. But that one really, really, really scared me going out there. One, I was in daylight, which I never do. That's, foreign. And then I find the back of this car has all these, top ranked Al Qaeda guys that we're out there actively looking for, pictures of all of them. So obviously somebody somewhere likes them.
Yeah.
So that one really kind of spooked me. But from the detection side of it, I think we worked it perfectly, came out with a good ending. Thankfully, we didn't have a response. But the second one was right after the same trip to Iraq. I just got there. maybe 2 weeks in, we had just done our changeover. The canine crew that was on the ground had just left, so we had taken over full time. And we started getting rockets lobbed in at us one night. And as soon as that happened, there were camera systems and alarm systems on the perimeter. The alarm system went off, camera kicked on, and it caught 5 people cutting the fence line, and they made their way onto the compound that we were on. So I had just gotten Basco out to go give him a potty break, and rockets started falling out of the sky. And I can remember Basco looking at me like, dude, what is this? And I'm like, I didn't do it. So we heard the radio go off and saying that there were these guys, out on the perimeter that had cut through the fence. So I grabbed him, threw him in the car, grabbed the guy that I was working with, one of my best friends to this day, and said, get in the truck, let's go. So we took off and went over to where they were at. On our way there, I was like, turn on your thermal imagers. I want a heat signature before we go into this area, because we were downwind of the burn pit for the installation and then a rubble field, and we were just downwind of all of that, probably 300 yards between where we were at and where the burn pit was. And I said, I want a heat signature before we go in there, because we knew they were in the rubble field somewhere. And before he could get the thermals turned on, Basco about dislocated my shoulder. I said, come on, we're going. And he dragged me probably 200 yards upwind through this rubble field, climbing over piles of rocks and stuff. And he stops and just starts growling and aggressing on the sheet of plywood. So I reeled him back in because I had him on a 360-inch leash. I pulled him back in and was like, all right. We looked at my buddy. I said, let's do this. And we kicked over the sheet of plywood that he was aggressing on, and all 5 of them were laid underneath it like this, trying to hide, hoping we wouldn't find them. Didn't give Basco any commands, no nothing. He smelled them. He knew what he was supposed to do. Took us straight to him, and that was probably those 2 incidents right there really were some just crazy, scary times. And like I said, I worked at night, so that one was in pitch black. You got to go trust your dog and follow him and do what you can.
What breed was that dog?
Basco was a Belgian Malinois. He was what I would call a true sentry dog. Vietnam handlers would have loved him. There was no playtime with him. If you tried to play with him or have a relationship with him, you were going to get bit. He would come up leash in a heartbeat. He wouldn't even think twice about it. But you sent him to work, and he was happy to work. It didn't matter if it was detection work. It didn't matter if it was patrol. That's all that dog wanted to do 24/7. He was amazing.
Wow.
Crazy, but amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and this is kind of a good segue for the next question is, what's the biggest difference between like your dog, I mean, the difference is obvious, right? You guys are looking for drugs. Our dogs are not. They're looking for odor. Right. But as far as training, what do you see as the biggest, I guess the biggest difference between the working dogs and the sport dogs, besides the real obvious? Because some of the detection folks say that it's not much of a difference. It's just the temperament of the dog. But I'm just...
Right. John, you want to take it or you want me to?
Yeah. So you're saying law enforcement can't have poodles, right?
You could, but they'll laugh at it. No, I'm kidding.
I would say the biggest thing I've noticed personally, now it's not really a blanket answer, because I do see some law enforcement were always trained as far as get in the room and get out. Don't over search. And have a pattern to it. If you go in, we always head to the left, check the exterior, the right, the opposite, counterclockwise, clockwise. So that's what biggest. We don't. If they pass it, they pass it. I mean, obviously, when you get certification, you're all nervous and you search a room like 10 times, thinking there's something there, and there's really not. It happens, but it's but unfortunately, it's one of those things where the most productive, because a lot of times you go to a school. There could be 100 rooms in a school, and you can't spend 10 minutes in each room trying to get everything done. So we go in. If we trust the dog enough, once we hang to the left there, if we pass it, we missed it, we'll get it next time. Or and that's what training's for. Trust your dog, that your dog's not going to miss it, and trust yourself that you can get your dog into productive areas. Don't don't corner your dog somewhere it's not going to help. It's not going to be proficient for you. That's the biggest thing I always, and I don't harp on it during the trials and stuff like that because I'm not a trainer. I know they rely on the dog's nose. It's a complete different world. We just have more of a standard, and I would go as far as say it's more of a standard. A lot of law enforcement, a lot of the military, as far as they kind of go by it, get in, get out, trust your dog, and go from there. That would be the biggest thing as far as difference, and it comes down to training. I mean, that's how the trainer, and I do see it on some trials. You'll come in and be like, "Oh, hey, that person's trainer is probably military or law enforcement," and I can see it. I mean, I'll just ask them like, "Hey, who's your trainer?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I trained them," and I'm like, "Oh, what'd you do?" And they're prior military, prior law enforcement. They understand the goals, and a lot of times you'll see that they're more effective than the ones running around the room. They may miss some, but they're a lot of times they're more effective and they get it and they don't over search a lot of the times because you'll see some that they'll miss a 10 by 10 area but search another area 4 or 5 times, not realizing it because you get lost. So
yeah.
You, John.
So I think what you said lends to where my brain was going with this is, between the police world and then TSA and the military world, we have that search pattern and inverted V and all of that stuff that happens, and being consistent in your search pattern, because at the end of the day, if you get called into a trial, you have to prove consistency, and you've done it this way every time, all the time, and I didn't search you any different than I searched the last one. So there's a legality that goes with that. So I think that right there is one thing that, like you said, you could tell who's an old canine trainer and who trains, that way. But I think the biggest thing is the difference between the two is the independence of the sport dogs, because we teach them to go in the room and you don't need me unless you're getting paid. So, a lot of times in the police world, the military world side, your dog can go into a room and get frustrated and they will look to you to step in and start making some presentations for you to help them out. Whereas in the sport world, a lot of the dogs are just, they understand that frustration is going to be there and they have to figure it out by themselves, because we start stepping in and helping them, then they're always going to turn around and look to us for help. So I think there's that balance between the two of how many presentations can you make and make sure they get in a productive area for the legal side of it, and then for the sport side of it, the dog's independence and willingness to work without your influence are the two biggest differences I would say I can see between the two worlds.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's really interesting, John. We had another person on, and I had asked that question: does the search pattern have anything to do with legality? Does it have anything to do with holding up in court, or is it strictly for just efficiency, remembering where you've been and that? So it's nice to hear you say, yeah, it does have something to do with legality.
I mean, it plays in with all of it, really, but at the end of the day, when you're consistent, you've covered that entire room because you do it the same way every time, all the time. You're not going to miss anything. You can hit it and get out and move on, because like you said, with a bomb threat, you got to get in. You're searching for drugs or at a school or whatever. You've got to get and get out. You've got time limits. You've got to get that building back up and running, factories running, schools back in session, whatever it may be. There's a bigger impact than, what the thought process is for most people. So the consistency and search patterns really helps with that, so it does play with keeping track. It also plays with legality reasons. It's kind of an all-in-one. Would you agree, John?
I would, and that's the biggest thing. I've actually had to testify in court as far as on a traffic stop, because they wanted to know why I start at different locations on a vehicle, why I always go on downwind side. And also I keep, especially if I don't have another patrol car there, you have to watch for traffic going by. So we used to note as far as downwind side, and we have to note the direction of the wind.
Absolutely.
In our reports, because they'll get asked, because of course if you arrest 2 people in the car, it's always the other person's fault. So when you get to court, you got 2 attorneys, and then now all of a sudden, just because you ran by the driver door first, that means you were biased against the driver and
Exactly.
everything. So we always use, as far as we know, why we started, right rear bumper, wind was traveling south, north, whatever it was. That's why we
Right.
started there. And it shows in our training. We do the training the same way. And if anybody asks in court, I'm just like, well, refer to the report. This is where I started. This is the way the wind was traveling. We don't as far as wind speed and stuff like that. Just the where we started and which way the wind was blowing. So I mean, that's what we've had to do. That I know for our training, we always do the same search pattern for classrooms, same ones with lockers, just the same. That way, if anybody asks, like, oh, well, this is exactly how I would have done it that day, because that's how I do it every time. Instead of trying to remember 4 years, because a lot of times you testify to cases 4 or 5 years old.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, I just finished up a DWI case that was like, I think it's 2013. Just finished. Yeah,
Wow.
just finished. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to read this report. Like,
Absolutely.
I don't remember. But if it was a canine report, I just be like, oh well, I would have searched the vehicle this way, because that's how I do it every time. I've done it that long. I mean, there's no inconsistent. You're always gonna have factors that you can't do that for some reason.
Yeah.
Maybe you're down on like I-70, which is super busy, and they run 120 mile an hour down there, and you don't want to start on that. I mean, you're going to have those, but you'll remember those. You'd be like, oh, well, yeah, this is why. Or they'll ask you, be like, oh, well, the traffic must have been heavy that day. I didn't have another officer running traffic control for me, or something like that. There's always exceptions for it, but overall, the consistency, I mean, helps in court when you're testifying with any, and that's not just canine training. That's just any
It's
training.
everything.
So anything you do, report writing, the better reports you do, the less you got to go to court. I mean, that's
Agreed. So I know you guys have seen a few trials and nosework trials. So what are some of the really good handling things you've seen consistently, and what are some of the not so good things you've seen consistently?
Go ahead, John. I saw the.
I'll take the bullet. A lot of the as far as a lot of the good things I've seen, the dogs, they're very well trained for pets, and I'd call them pets. I know they're nosework dogs, but in general, they're pets. I mean, they're rescues.
Yeah.
Rescues. I mean, you go home and it's not like they sit in a kennel and then they go to work. They
Right.
run around the house. My patrol dog doesn't run around the house. If he ran around the house, I'd be divorced. So he doesn't get to run around the house. He'd eat shades, eat couches. I mean, it's just his intensity is so high all the time. There's not really any downtime. When he's in his kennel, he'll sit there and just bark when he's lonely. So I had to go out there. I mean, he's always wanting to work, always wanting to do something. So as far as with them at the trials, I mean, as far as getting the dogs, I've seen some dogs come in there that have more drive than my patrol dog. And I'm just thinking, like, I know how much our patrol dogs cost. And I'm like, this is someone's pet. And it has more drive than someone's pet. It just amazes me that they can get the drive and the dog's having so much fun doing that. And they can calm down and just lay on somebody's lap all day long, just like a normal dog. So I mean, that's definitely a positive note. Just the excitement, keeping them all worked out. Everybody gets frustrated, and I can't say that I've ever seen anybody get mad at their dog. Personally, I get mad at my patrol dog all the time. So I'm like, "What are you doing, dummy?" And usually it's my fault. Unfortunately, usually I'm like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have done." That's why he done that. Okay, I'm sorry, buddy. Here's a tennis ball. But they don't really get frustrated with them, and they coax them on, and like we spoke about earlier in law enforcement and military, we go and we try to help. We present different locations to help the dog out. That would be hard for me not to do, to sit there and watch my dog struggle, and me knowing like, hey, if I can get into that corner, I know he's going to be an odor, but I wouldn't be. It'd be hard, and I see a lot of them do it at the trials, that they'll just let the dog work it out. To me, I would want to get in there and just, oh, hey, oh, let's go, buddy, let's go. And so just holding back, I know it's hard for them, because I would say they know, hey, if I get them there, well, but it's just letting the dog figure it out. So, I mean, that's props to them as far as letting the dog work it, relying on the dog to figure it out. I mean, it's a giant puzzle for the dogs trying to piece it together, be like, oh, if I get this location, I'm eventually going to get to source once I get that odor. Being as negative, I wouldn't say there was as far as much a lot of negative about it. I mean, everybody's got their different ways. There's not one way to work a canine. There's thousands of different ways. It depends on each scenario. Me and John, we're going to do things different, and I do things different on different training than anybody else we train with. It's just the way we do it, and it's what's comfortable for you. You're used to it. Once you're comfortable, it doesn't run down the lead. If you get nervous, your dog feels it. I mean, they say that it runs down the leash. It really does. As far as the biggest negative is getting lost in a room, or as far as you walk in and then look around, and as judges, we can sit back and we're sitting there thinking like, well, why didn't they check the other half of the room? They're not realizing it, but they're walking around in circles. And that comes back down to if you had a search pattern, because unfortunately I've seen it. Like they leave with half the room, and I'm like, and sometimes it'd be blank. I'm like, man, they lucked out, or they're really good. So, but as far as getting lost, and that comes down to the different training. As far as because you get into the room, we do it. We go into schools. There's chairs everywhere. You'll start going up and down aisles, and you're like, I don't know if I've been there or not, especially during certification. You're nervous, and you start, of course, your master instructor is just like,
what are you doing?
Just shaking his head, and your heart just drops because you're like, he's either messing with me or he's just testing me. So that's probably the biggest thing is walking into the room. I mean, you gotta have a plan when you come into the room. Otherwise it's gonna fall apart. So. Yeah, that's probably the only negative as far as with it. Other than that, I mean, everybody does a great job.
Yeah.
John?
I think the biggest positive I've seen over the years is the leash handling. In the beginning, because we were both in it very early, and everybody had a 6 foot or a 4 foot leash, and they were right up their dog's butt, and they were like, yep. I mean, you couldn't be more. You might as well be Siamese twins. So now you see everybody coming in with a 15, 20 foot leash, and it doesn't matter if it's a classroom. They're in there working a classroom with 30 chairs in the room, several desks and file cabinets, and they're putting that dog on a long line and they're flipping them over rows. And we would have never seen that years ago. That would have never happened. So the leash handling is the increase in leash handling for me by far the best thing I've seen over the years as a change. The negatives I would say is probably us as handlers and trainers, handlers more than trainers. Let me rephrase that. Trying to rush the dog into trials and situations where they're not ready to compete at. Because you got your NW1 and Annis does not mean you're going to be successful at NW2. But I see, I see a lot of people, and I've even had students. They're like, well, do you think I can go do this? You've had 3 classes with me, like 3, like last Tuesday, this Tuesday, and this Thursday, and you want to go compete at NW1? No, you're not ready.
Yes.
So, us trying to rush into this and get that dog into a trial and go, I think we want to do that for our own gratification. We don't take that into consideration for the dog. So I think for me, I can see dogs at a trial, and I'm like, you haven't been NW1 or NW2 very long, have you? They're like, oh, we got our NW2 last weekend. This is our first NW3.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of confidence in the handlers as well. When they jump too early, because they're like, well, is my dog really not that good? Well, he's not. In fact, he's not good. He just doesn't have experience.
Right.
Go ask some of the handlers that are in there. They've been waiting, several months or even years trying to get into it, and they're still training. So
right. Well, and we Joanne and I see it all the time. We have students that come, well, I want to go out there and compete, and it's a delicate position to be with your students, right? Because you want to encourage them to compete and go in there with their dog, but the dog may not be ready or might have some issues that may not. But the stress of not being able to get into trials, even though that's slowly changing. There's a lot more trials now, and people can hopefully get into more. But yeah, it's a delicate delicate dance that we do on that one, right? Because you don't want to discourage them because
Right.
you see the potential in the dog and the team, but you try, but they have to wait until the dog is more experience, especially with the young dogs. We see that
Very much so.
yeah, when you see they get a new
Very much
dog
so.
and they decide they're going to go out there and go ahead and trial because they did it with their last dog. So
You know, I've been guilty of doing that in obedience and in rally and some other things. I've been like, I got this. We're gonna go do this, and my dog's like, man, what are we doing? And I'm like, what are you doing? But I was pushing it for the dog. I knew I shouldn't have been there, but I did it. You know, we've all done it at some point. So
yeah,
Yep.
it's a learning experience.
You take them off the leash and they just run away. I've had that one happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's why it's so nice. Go ahead, John.
I just look over, like we were doing certification off lead, hadn't messed with him. He was fine on lead. He heard the click of the leash and he was gone. I'm like, oh, we're gonna have to go back to our car.
Well, I think that's what's so nice about there being so many new venues to play in, right? Because there are appropriate things where people can do, nice lower level stuff and keep the dog there for great practice. So,
You know, and just the experience of doing it,
yes.
because not only does that dog get valuable training experience in these other venues, even though it's a trial or a fun match or whatever it is, but the exposure that the dog gets just solidifies and helps in concrete that training in, and it also builds the confidence of the handler to be able to go in there. You get all those jitters out. I've done this 100 times now it's old hat. I got this, let's go do this. So it all plays. You go in all these other organizations and play with them and get that experience, and it runs down leash. It helps.
Yeah.
So I have an NACSW question for you guys, and I don't think anyone's ever answered it before, and it's kind of a mystery.
Oh man, I knew I should have read the rules before we came in here.
Right.
So what do you guys see in a team that makes you put a P in that pronounce box?
Oh, I got this. You want me to take this one?
Go right ahead.
So for me,
mine's not too far.
So for me, it's a team concept, right? This whole thing is a team concept,
right?
So when that team jumps up and I see the handler train or go in there with the dog, and the dog starts struggling, and the handler can identify that step up, help the dog, and they have success. Or even if they don't have success, but the dog can overcome whatever challenge, the distraction, the fear, the whatever it was that made that handler step in and help that dog through that and successfully move on, whether they found an odor or they just overcame a fear of that little red stool in the corner of the room. To me, that right there tells me you know your dog. You know what your dog needs. You saw it. You identified it. You stepped in and helped your dog. You didn't frustrate. You praised. You moved on. And you didn't make it a negative for you or the dog. When I see something like that, whether you found the hide or not, you're going to find a P in the bottom of that corner because you guys are doing what this was supposed to be about. Teamwork and the confidence to help each other through this. For me, that's one of those scenarios. And on the flip side of that, the dog comes in a room and just hammers everything, and the handler's like, alert, pay, alert, pay, alert, pay, and they're just there, and the handler's completely out of the dog's way, moves around the room fluidly, and really does that, dances the dog's working, stays out of the way, doesn't interfere, understands the dog's work. When I see a team really gelled together to that experience where the dog is way out off leash working and doing its thing, and handler's just observing, and it all comes together, and that just, it looks beautiful. To me, that's another thing. But those are the two things that I really look for when I'm giving the pronounced on those sheets, is how well you facilitate your dog's needs, and then how well you two just hammer this search that turned out better than anybody else ever did. You know, it just looks like that's the way it should be written in a textbook. Those things are really the two things that make me look for those.
John, Taylor, do you have anything else to add?
Well, let's just show you how on track we are with this. This little paper that you guys emailed me here, that last clip.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll read it to you. It says, "Ask, what do you think a team inspires to give it pronounced?" It says the exact same thing John said. Teamwork, working through a challenging course and not letting the emotions run down the leash, or having the dog come in, the handler out of the way, and the dog just blowing away the competition in the room.
There you go.
So by meaning that, as far as the dog just coming in, like he said, just the handler standing there, and the dog knows exactly what to do. The dog's ready to work. The handler calls alert, and is right there with the dog. I mean, that's just complete. That's teamwork. The handler trusts the dog. The dog knows what's doing. The dog knows the handler's gonna know what to do, so the dog gets a reward. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I look for. I like seeing the dog just come in and smoke the course and walk out the door proud, because they're like, we got this. There's no doubts that, oh, we missed one.
Yeah.
So everybody's gonna have doubts. Like, you just, because you know a handler, when they come out of the room, they know if they found all the hides or not. That's how confident
Absolutely.
they are.
You know,
And
the other thing I look for on the flip side of that is, if you have to ask your dog, are you sure? Can you touch it? Tell me where it's at. Show me. Show me. Show me. Sooner or later, your dog's going to be like, you know what? You do this, I'm out. So, you know, that will not get the pee.
Oh my God, that's funny. So do you guys have any questions for John Taylor, John Sarabia, that have been burning to ask the judges? Because if you're trialing or you're going out there to the trials, you're going to see one of them or both of them at some point in your life, if you're from this part of the world, right? So you'll be able to see them. So while we're waiting to see if anybody has questions, let me ask you: if somebody was brand new to nose work, and it's a brand new team, what advice would you give to them as they start their journey? Right? What advice would you give them to getting started in canine nose work?
I would say, I mean, something I was kind of preached to me. I mean, it's kind of a silly term. It's the 5 P's. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. And what I mean by this, and this goes for anything in life.
Yeah.
If you mess around in training, you're not going to do well at the trials. You're not going to do well during certification. If you just go there with some friends to hang out, I mean, if you're not forcing your dog to work, it's not gonna. I mean, you're not preparing your dog. You're not preparing yourself as a team. So you might pass, but that's one of those things where you fake it till you make it. Nobody wants to risk that. I mean, people do it. I see it. Guilty of it.
We've all done it.
But if you prepare and you're ready, if you're confident, you're blowing through all your training scenarios, you're getting it all. I mean, you're gonna walk into the trials and you're gonna be like, I'm ready for this. It's gonna run down the leash, and your dog's gonna be like, I'm ready for this.
Absolutely.
So if you come in nervous, your dog's gonna be nervous. It's gonna run down the lead. You're gonna get frustrated with your dog. Something's gonna happen, and your dog's either gonna quit working or it's gonna give you a false. Something's gonna happen. It's gonna run down the leash if you're not prepared. So that's the biggest thing I would preach. Just like you're at home, just like we do in our trainings, we have goof off days. But as far as when it comes down to serious, we know we have to train serious, because when it comes down to it, I hope my dog will bite whenever I send him in a real life scenario. Because if you've just been goofing off and slacking on your bite work, then what happens if your dog just starts running beside your suspects? They think they're out for a jog. I've seen that. Not even gonna lie, I've seen it. So, and unfortunately, that's a training issue that needs fixed.
Yeah.
But I would just say, I mean, train just like you're doing trials, and then when trial day comes, you're just gonna blow through it, and it's gonna pay off in the end.
Okay, John Sarabia.
I agree with the train and making sure you're prepared. But on the flip side of that, this has got to be fun, for you and me and for everybody else involved. If we're not having fun, why are we doing this? So if I'm not having fun, then I shouldn't be doing it. And if my dog's not enjoying it, then why am I going to make my dog do it? Because we're not going to be successful. But when me as a handler and my dog are having a blast and we're going through this and we're having fun and Nancy's over in the corner teaching the class, yelling at me and making fun of me and we're joking around and having a good time with this, that's the way it should be. You should be able to have fun doing this because while you're relaxed, like you said, it runs down leash. You're prepared. You're comfortable. It's not stressful. And it takes a long time to get there because I don't know how many certifications you've gone through. I went through a ton when I was a handler, and every one of them for the first probably 5 years made me nervous as hell. After that, I finally went, man, I really love my job and I really enjoy doing this. And I shouldn't be as stressed out as I am because it's really not productive. Right. And I learned to relax through it after that. And if we can have fun while we're doing this and learn, that to me is one of the most important things for somebody new, because they look at all these other teams that have had success and are working at different levels and they're like, I want to be like that. But we're not there. Don't compare yourself to them because you're not them. We're not at that level yet. Play at this level, get confident, get comfortable, have fun. You'll be there sooner or later. Just enjoy your journey with your dog.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. And canine, I mean, it's a specialty thing, and it's expensive to do. I mean, you have to love it to keep doing it. It's expensive. You never make any, because if you make it, you spend it all on dog toys.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. I mean, we're always spending money on stuff like that. So I mean, it's one of those things where it's an expensive hobby. People may not see it as like, oh, it's just a dog, but they don't realize the cost that goes into it. Certifications. We go to Texas for certification. There's hotel, fuel. I mean, that's like 12 hours away, and so I mean, it's expensive. So
not only that, but lost time with your family, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk to my wife, you talk to your wife. When I was a handler, I was probably at the kennels more than I was at home. If I wasn't at work, I was at the kennels training. So, it's lost time. You got to commit to it.
So Judy had a question. What do you think is the most common reason for false alerts at trial? I know the answer to this one.
John, want this one?
Sure, I'll take it. So for me, when your dog is used to working very independently and without your influence, and then you decide to step in and go, hey, what's right here? Check right here. Check right here. Are you sure? Check right here. And you start staying in one area too long and really presenting something with your body. You may not even be going, hey, check right here and pointing at something, but you are facing an object and just staring at it. Your dog goes, what are you looking at? Let me go check this. Well, you're interested in it. I must be interested in it. Let me see if this gets paid. So they start giving you a behavior because they think you're influencing their search behavior. So, you stepping in and doing something that you never do any other training day because you got trial jitters. Those little things like that, standing still, presenting a chair, even though you're not meaning to, and just staring at it, that can make your dog false.
Yep. And I completely agree with that. As far as if you're not used to giving your dog presentations as far as different things, but you do in trial one day because the dog can't quite find it or you can't get the source, and you walk up there and you're like, oh, and you start to even a shoulder. I mean, I've seen dogs cue off the shoulder. Oh, he's about to get a treat, and they're like, oh, they sit real quick. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. It's just a training issue. Something the dog's like, oh, maybe it is here. I just can't, I can't quite get to it. So, I mean, it goes down to that as far as cueing your dogs. I mean, the biggest thing I've always been taught, and John may have different, get a camera, have someone record it.
Absolutely.
And then you'll see you'll see how you're cueing your dog. Like you'll see like why I mean we still do it. And I'm like, why am I walking like that? Or you see stuff you're like that you can better, or like why am I in my dog's way when clearly there's a huge search area behind me that he can't get to because I've got him. I'm sitting there hugging him in the corner.
Yeah.
So I mean, you get lost. You're sitting there. You're focused on the dog. The easiest way is just back up. Don't pay attention to the dog. Don't even look at the dog, because then you'll start getting that head snap. Because if you look at the dog's gonna look at you. So just try not to look at your dog. Keep him in the corner of your eye, and so he'll get used to you not looking and not look. He'll quit looking for cues. Once he stops looking at you and stops looking for cues, he'll start working. But if you change that if you train like that and you get your jitters, like you said, trials, and you start doing something a little different, your dog's smart. Dogs aren't dumb. They'll pick up and they'll be like, there probably is something there. You may think, I don't know about you, but I can't smell those odors. I can't smell them there, so I don't know if it's actually there or not. Same way with our training. That's what our master trainer always says. Well, can you smell that cocaine sitting in there? I'm like, well, no. Then why are you telling your dog that it's in there? Why don't you let him tell you? He can smell it. So you there. Now, during the training phase, if you actually know something's there and you've pushed the dog too far, then you need to go back and start working on your odor recognition and stuff like that for training. But as far as if you don't know it's there, don't tell your dog it's there. I mean, that's what he's there for. That's why you spent so much money on him. That's why the department's got faith in him. And that's how you'll cue your dog. And then if you got somebody that's constantly doing that, eventually you're going to get a dog that is looking at your cues, and he's going to cue on. Give you a false alert more often than not, unfortunately. You just start from square one and try to break him of it.
Yeah. So Elizabeth actually had a good follow-up question to that. Was how should a handler follow up a false alert? Like once you've got a false at a trial, like right in the moment, what can you do to,
Unfortunately, in the moment, because you've got a false and that's a no and you're out, at that point, we can't really do anything in that exact moment. For me, I try to recreate a very similar scenario to where that false happened, and run that in training. And then if it was me standing still, facing an object, presenting a chair, or whatever it was that caused it, I would go do that again until my dog decided to get up and move on and not fall for my dumb mistakes. And I would mark that, behavior that he didn't fall for it. And then when he got to the source where he was supposed to alert, and he did give me that alert, I would jackpot the hell out of that find and make sure he knew that's exactly that pays. My big dummy mistake over here doesn't pay. Don't listen to me. Listen, you tell me when you're right, not when I think you're, I'm giving you bad information. So for me in training, I would try to recreate that. That's called handler proofing. We go out, and even me as a trainer now here, when the dogs are done training and we're getting ready to give them over to students, we spend a lot of time trying to break the dog, trying to do dumb things like that, so the dog doesn't pick that up from a handler that has never handled a dog before, because they're going to do those things and make those mistakes. So we try to recreate that in training. And I've had that problem with all of my nosework dogs. I've done so stupid things, and then I'm like, oh man. So I'll go recreate that environment again somewhere else and just have the dog work through it and then jackpot them. That's how I would do it. But you put four of us trainers in one room, three of them are going to tell you I'm wrong. So,
yeah.
So what do you got, John? Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, and that's the biggest thing. I mean, recreating it's the biggest thing, and finding out seeing if it's the dog's issue or if it's the handler's issue.
Right.
9 times out of 10, it's going to be the handler's issue.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's where you're going to come down to. Just like I told you guys earlier, I came across a new one. It was last Thursday, I believe. I got called out, and we ran on a Jeep, and apparently, Ron, I can't tell you that he's ever actually searched around a Jeep that had a tire hanging on the back of it. That was something new to him. So now that's an issue that I have to fix with him. You're going to learn those things. I mean, he didn't like the tire on the back of it. He thought he was going to run down the highway with it. So, I mean, you're going to learn stuff like that. But 9 times out of 10, you're cueing your dog, and you just need to recreate it and praise him. I mean, I don't get discouraged because he did give you a false, because at that time you don't know if it was you cueing him or if it was him. I mean, unless you have a trainer sitting there, oh, that's the dog's fault. 9 times out of 10, it's not. You probably cued him or something like that, or something happened. There was an external issue that was taking place that caused the dog, or maybe he got right into odor and didn't follow it all the way back to source, and he was still a long way away. I mean, it's going to happen. So try to recreate it, and then once he does follow it back to source, and the first time he gets it, I mean, just throw him a party, a birthday party or something, and just let him know, because he's going to remember it, because I know you do it, and then you take him out of the room for a few minutes and run it back in and run the same exact thing. Because when he gets there, he's gonna be excited. You'll see his tail start wagging because he knows, oh man, that was fun. I got lots of hot dogs or whatever you're feeding him, and then you'll break him of it real quick as far as false alerts. But like I said, false alerts, my personal opinion, 9 times out of 10, it's the handler cueing them. Like I said, I encourage you to record in these record yourself searching or with your canine, and you'll be able to see, and you won't even have to have anybody with you. You'll be able to see the mistakes you're making or something you could do better next time to stay out of his way, or something that, hey, maybe if I would have got him over here, he would have went ahead and done what he was supposed to do.
No. So Judy,
I agree with the camera thing, because I had my youngest son go with me when I was training our dogs for nose work. He followed me around every training scenario I set up, and I sat down, and even when I'm doing obedience or rally or anything like that, I videotape all my runs, because I want to see how I am influencing my dog, whether it's good or bad. So I couldn't agree more with that videotape.
Yeah. So Judy was asking about, you should make deliberate mistakes. Yeah. You should recreate the mistakes we make, and you have to proof them. You have to proof your dog off of them. Absolutely. And
but do it later in training, after your dog really understands what's desired of them. Then you can go in there and make those mistakes, because if you do that very early on, now your dog is going to have mixed signals and go, what do you want, man? You didn't do it that way last time. So you have to be consistent. Make sure your dog understands the task that's being performed. And then after that, you can go add in your big dum-dum and go, hey, look what I'm doing. Can you work around that? And work through there.
I would definitely encourage having a very stronger dog. I mean, later in the, when you start throwing hard, I mean, essentially nose work is a giant puzzle for dogs. They have to work it out. You start throwing really hard puzzles in there on the new dog, they're going to freeze. You're going to get frustrated. The dog's going to get frustrated, and the dog's just going to give up and quit working. We go through it, police canine. I mean, when we get our canines, they don't know how to sit. They just know how to walk around and pant. That's all they do. We get them on airplanes, and they teach you. They're like, well, don't start beating obedience in them because you just got them. Don't start throwing a bunch of scenarios or anything, because they'll bite you. I mean, they got some bite work in them just to verify that they can pass to be able to for the company to purchase them. But when you start throwing really hard scenarios, then the dog's going to get all confused. He's not going to know what you want out of him, and I think eventually it's just you're gonna get so far down, and you're not gonna have your stepping stones and a good foundation when you actually need it, when you get to your NW2, NW3, and you may have to go back and start slowly trying to build that foundation if you jump too early.
Right. And Elizabeth, Elizabeth asked about what do you do in the moment? And what the one thing that I wanted to touch on is, it is very hard not to feel disappointed when you get a false alert. It is very, very difficult. So it's kind of figuring out how to handle that disappointment and being able to move on for your dog, because it's really hard to not be disappointed. I wish I could say, oh, I get a false alert, I'm not disappointed. I am disappointed. So it's just being able to handle that. The mental piece of that is tough.
For me, Nancy, when I'm judging and I see something like that happen, I'll write something on the score sheet in the remark section to jog my memory, and then I'll tell them on their way out. Well, on the way out the door, I'll be like, "Hey, come see me after this. Go look at your score sheet and come talk to me afterward." And I'll talk to them about, "Hey, this happened because of this." and depending on what level we're at, right? Sometimes I will get that handler. Hey, before you leave, go stand next to that file cabinet real quick, and let that dog have some success before they walk out the door. So for me, as a judge and timing and things like that, when I'm able to do that for a team, I will make sure the dog leaves successfully in their mind. But at the same time, I'll give the handler something on their score sheet to say, hey, come back and talk to me about this because I can tell you why that happened. And that way you'll understand it. So you can go out and work on that down the road, which is what she was asking.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I don't have anything to add on that. I mean, that's the biggest thing. The only thing, I mean, I would agree. Don't end on a bad note. I mean, don't let the dog's
Absolutely.
gonna, when you say, when you get a false, your dog's not gonna get praise. He's gonna be, in his mind, he obviously is like, oh well, something must be there, but you didn't praise him, so the dog doesn't really know what's going on. So make sure shortly after that you give him some positive. You go out and if you got some stuff in your vehicle or whatever you can, as far as just make sure you get some positive note back and get the dog pumped back up. It's not the end of the world. I mean, I know that it feels like the end of the world for certification and stuff like that. It really does. And we know it's hard to bottle that up. But like John said, we try to write notes or we'll talk to them on their way out because we've probably seen why they falsed. They either didn't work all the way. I mean, they were still a long way from source or whatnot. Or maybe, you never know, 4 or 5 dogs may have hit at the same spot right before you.
Yeah.
I
That
mean,
is an issue.
so you never know. I mean, I mean, I've seen it as far as, and sometimes you just can't explain it. There's just something right there. I mean, obviously, and that's what the COs are for, and that's what the event coordinator stuff like that's for. As far as if that becomes an issue, then we'll address it on that. But you never know what happened. There may be 4 dogs before you that did the same thing, or 4 dogs after you, and there may be nothing wrong with your dog. There just may be some environmental issue that dog can't, or is it just strong enough to work past at this point? We'll explain that in the as far as in the notes and everything like that. So I know it's hard not to get down on yourself because at that point you're like, oh, I done something to the dog, or oh, my dog just didn't get it or whatnot. It may have been an environmental issue. It may have been you cued him. It may have been the dog just wasn't strong enough to get past that challenge of a course, and he next time you know what to train for, and you're just going to smoke through it next time.
Right. So anyway, I think that's
I had one more to kind of round us out.
Yep. Go, girl.
So, what advice would you guys give your younger selves with regard to dogs?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
That's a
Go
good
ahead,
one. All right, I'll take it. For me, like I said in the beginning, when I came into the police side of the house, the military side of the house, it was a lot of compulsion training. And I had been exposed to, positive reward methods, lure and reward, for probably 3 or 5 years before that, because that's what really got me interested in dog training. My wife and I got a dog. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. Got too much dog and had to hire a trainer. And she was very progressive, mid-90s, lure and reward, food rewards for everything, no compulsion. And that Michelle and I, that just lit a fire in both of us. And then several years later, I got to go to canine school and I got taught compulsion. So for me, be open to all these different styles and methods of training, put them all in your toolbox, and pick and choose what's valuable and what will work at this point in time. Because not everything may work with every dog, but one of those little tools you have in there will be useful at some point in time. So have an open mind, collect as much information and experience as you can, and use it to your advantage down the road. Because a lot of times people get stuck in these one rut, I mean, that, oh, I only do clickers, only clickers. Clickers are everything. And then, sometimes the clicker just isn't the answer. I found use. I'm not a fan of it. That's not my primary method. But there's other people that absolutely refuse to verbally praise their dogs. And for me, that's everything. That's my primary source. So, just have a big package to work from and use it to your advantage.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with Don there. The biggest advice I could have gave myself is to make sure um, you have an open mind when it comes to different trainers, because you're going to have 4 trainers from this company, 4 trainers from the other.
Mhm.
None do the same thing. Somebody's going to be sick one day. Every handler's going to do different things, and it works for them. It's their comfort zone. I handle different than anybody else around here, and they're the same. Vice versa. John handles different than what I would. And as far as keeping an open mind, as far as and bringing it back, and don't get, he stated, a one rut. I mean, there's going to be different things. I mean, our reward a lot of times, mine I use tennis ball. Absolutely love tennis ball. A lot of times, the dog can actually hold it. Super slimy when it gets out, but I ain't got to worry about it flying out of its mouth like a Kong. Love tennis balls. He loves the tennis ball. We use it for almost, that's what we started on tracking and stuff with him. We still use it for narcotics and stuff like that. That's just, I love tennis balls. I love praise. Clickers, I can't really say anything about clickers. I've never actually been around someone that trained with clickers. I don't understand how they actually work for praise, because I've heard them click and it doesn't excite me. So why would it excite my dog? So it's I mean, it's one of those things. I've granted there's studies out there stating that they work. There's people been successful. I'm not downgrading them. It's just something I personally wouldn't wouldn't try, because I don't understand it. Now I'm sure if I went to a course and they explained how it worked, I would probably be the only person out there hugging my dog, and still, because it just wouldn't work. So that's the biggest thing, is keeping an open mind, because like I said, I've been through three different canine, 8 to 10 week courses each, besides our certifications, and they all teach you different things. But you just, like he just have to take that giant toolbox. You're going to hand select each thing that you love doing, that you enjoy, that works with your dog. Now, the issue, I've had 3 dogs. Every dog is different. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't do the same stuff. Like my Dutchie, I can't use the same stuff that I used with my Malinois, and then I sure can't use any one of those 2 when I had my Shepherd, because he ain't gonna have no part of that, because he didn't have. The Shepherds are a lot different than the Malinois and the Dutchie. So I mean, you just have to. The biggest thing is going to all these trainings and these seminars and learning from these guys. That's like John's got 20, 30 years of experience, military, law enforcement, different nose works, and gaining, even if it's just one useful tool out of that whole.
Absolutely.
It may save you. You're like, oh, I should have been doing that 10 years ago. I'd be a rock star. And be able to use that, because it's going to make you better. Your dog's going to eventually going to retire, and he's going to be a just stay at home dog. And a new dog. Once you get a new dog, you're going to restart, and that dog may be completely different than your last dog. And everybody sees it, especially if you have. So like John, he's a trainer, so he sees every one of those dogs have a different personality.
Right.
You know which come back up the leash. You know which dog you could probably sit there and stick your finger in its ear, and he's just going to look at you like you're nothing. Each dog has different personality, so the more tools you have, the more successful you're going to be, in my mind.
Mhm.
And with what you were just saying there, is for me in my current job now, it's super important for me to be able to pull from that toolbox, because right now I have 4 different dogs assigned to me. Every day I train 4 different dogs. So they all have little different quirks. Some of them have different rewards. Some of them like to play tug. Some of them just want the possession. The other ones want physical praise. I have to know each one of those dogs in and out every day when I take them in there to train, because they have to be able to be the best that they can be to be able to go out in the field and do work. So having that toolbox and being around Nancy and everybody else that trains with Nancy and all these other places, that you do training with, and like you said, go see other trainers, learn from them. It's gonna be something you can use down the road. It may not be this dog or the next dog, but somebody's dog somewhere you can go, hey, why don't you try this? I just give this a whirl. It will pay off.
Right. And a lot of people don't understand when it comes to the trainers, that's 8 different personalities he's got to work with every day. When the hand gets, so I mean, you have the
Yep.
dogs, then you have the people's personalities. They're all different. And
Yeah.
then you got to got to match. Once you match them, you hope you're close enough that they're going to mesh and they're going to bond, create that bond.
Mhm.
Because if they not, I've seen them when they don't, it's always a terrible mess.
Right.
And then just make sure they mesh, and then you have to make sure that they're both ready to hit the street or hit the contract overseas wherever they're headed, as far as with it. And you have the confidence enough in them to get the job done that, hey, if something happens, I'm reliable. Because essentially, if something happens and the dog goes out and somehow gets the handler killed, or the handler gets the dog unfortunately killed, it's going to come back to the John there they're going to subpoena him
Yeah.
and be like, well, what's training like? And he's going to have to be like, hey, I train all my dogs this way. This is how we do it. This is why this dog was with this handler. Comes all back down to liability that he's got to recognize. I mean, if he sees a handler and a dog not getting along, I mean, he's not going to send them out. I mean, he's going to have to obviously find alternate routes, find another sub dog, and go from there.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean. It's like everybody, when you have, and those of us, like I'm training multiple dogs as well, all the time, and they're all different, and just being able to make those calls and dealing with folks and their dogs, because it is a lot of personalities. But I think at the end of the day, mostly everybody really loves their dogs, and it's just trying to understand each other, right? And sometimes we, make a good call, and sometimes we don't. So, Joanne, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's just it's a really good point. Part of that, it takes some time too, right? I'm sure, John, you struggle, right? You got to pull that dog out of a kennel, and I mean, you got to learn quick. You probably don't have very long with them, right? So, yeah. I know some of us, it takes months just to really get to know that dog and how they search and what works best. And so it is a journey. You're right, for sure.
Yeah, genetics help on my end.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting good dogs. Don't get me wrong. That helps. So
yeah, it does. Makes things a little easier when you have something. And that's what I mean. That's one of the challenges with some of our client dogs. They, they're rescues, or they've had some issues or whatever. So we really have to, get through that to be able to get them to, and also keep the dog motivated and the handler motivated.
And the handler, yep.
Right, to keep going. All right, this was awesome, you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. This was wonderful. If you want to learn about other things that we're doing and other Facebook Lives, like our Facebook page for your canine, and for better or for worse, so that we will keep you kind of in the loop about what's going on. Thank you, John. And John, it was wonderful. It was so great. I really enjoyed it. It was wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
I'm having technology issues, and thank you guys.
All right, hang tight for a second.